Good morning. There's something that's been on my mind here since the election. You know, and this may sound way off base, but something that's sort of a theory of mine that's sort of I've been postulating on is, I'm seeing all these sort of protests going on in the country, and the division, and something that struck me is, before the election, even before the conventions, we had this eruption of this Black Lives Matter movement, and the narrative that somehow or another, all the police are out to kill black people and all the white people in America hate them, and there's this racial injustice. And if we get down to the brass tacks of it, every race is racist. However, individuals are not. I'm reminded of the movie Men in Black, where the Fresh Prince's character, forget his name now, I don't know why, but is talking with Tommy Lee Jones' character, and he says, "Why don't you tell people? People are smart." Tommy Lee says, "No, a person is smart. People are just panicky herd animals." And that's, I think, lends a little bit to what we have happening in the country right now. And the theory that I'm working on is that we had this Black Lives narrative, and part of that narrative was the Summer of Chaos, which there was a targeted, specific media propaganda movement to paint Trump as a white supremacist and a racist, and so there was this designated movement against him. Now, I've spent the last couple of days for probably 5-6 hours a day trying to find where he actually said something racist, and I can't find any instances where he specifically said anything that could be construed as racist. An example would be, people don't remember that the Mexican government was actually printing pamphlets, and they were handing out these pamphlets to people which gave instructions on how to illegally cross the border, as well as file for assistance in the welfare programs. And that was the Mexican government was printing these pamphlets, and they were handing these pamphlets out, and they were handing them out to people they were letting out of prison. So when Trump said, "When Mexico sends us their people," he wasn't saying when people from Mexico come across the border. He was talking specifically about when Mexico sends their people. And it was the Mexican government sending criminals. It's a plain fact. So that's where the media steps in and starts, the propaganda campaign. And so now, with an understanding there, we have Black Lives Matter propagating this whole, the whole narrative that they presented. And then you've got the media with their targeted campaign to paint Trump as a racist. And so then they come along and, they start bringing out the storyline that, the elections are rigged and they're going to be stolen. And then, of course, they, the WikiLeaks and the emails about Wasserman Schultz and how the DNC rigged the primaries against Bernie. And so that just reinforces that narrative about Clinton and rigging the campaign. So then you present this idea that somehow or another she's going to, steal the election. And of course, that then in turn gets all of the Trump supporters bent out of shape. So as we watch this progress, we've got, of course, the Black Lives Matter, the racial tensions, and we know that the Black Lives Matter movement was propagated by George Soros, who is, an NWO insider, the New World Order, controlled by the Vatican. And you've got Obama, who is propagating the Black Lives Matter, having them show up at the White House and basically endorsing them. You've got the idea that Clinton is somehow going to steal the election. You've got the Trump supporters getting bent out of shape over this. And so from that point, the sort of the conclusion you draw is that, she's going to win, he's going to win the election, but she is going to somehow figure out a way to steal it. And, by doing this, then you have the Trump supporters up in arms. And of course, then you would have the other factions stepping up in defense. And of course, the tensions explode. Well, now let's backtrack for a second. And let's change that narrative slightly. Let's say Trump wins the election. And now you've got all these supposedly disenfranchised members of our country who then decide that, they are so brainwashed by the Trump's a racist narrative. So you've already got, sectors of the country fired up over, the white supremacy and all this and the white privilege and that. So now the supporters of Clinton, who of course are mostly, these college students, the African American community, which, that to me, that's a whole nother side deal. But the black vote, and then, why do we call black people African Americans? We don't call white people European Americans. We call them white people because their skin appears to be white. Okay. Why is it? It's something that's a whole nother deal. But anyhow, so now they've fired up certain sectors that are supporters of the Clinton crime machine. And you turn around and you have Trump win the vote. So now, those same supporters are sent into the streets and they're destroying the cities. They're destroying their neighborhoods. They're calling for occupying the inauguration. They're calling for violence. Black Lives Matter 757, I saw in a tweet, called for people to arm themselves and take it to the streets. Militia groups are arming themselves to the teeth. Seriously, is this really where we're going to allow the global cabal to take us? Are we really going to fall into the brainwashing trap? Can we not see what is happening? The path that I see laid out is they have these sectors that are now in the streets because they've propagated this entire, narrative about how it's, Trump's a racist and he was just installed as emperor of the world, and he's going to, you know, kill all gay people, and women are going to be second-class citizens, and minorities are going to be jailed or thrown out of the country. I mean, come on. Seriously? Is that really what people think? But the path that I see laid out is these protests, quote unquote, riots is what they really should be calling them. So these riots, because the government doesn't take decisive action in defense of the citizens who are most at risk, which these people have their right to voice their discontent. That's part of why I served in the military. And yet we have these actual peaceful protesters in Standing Rock who are being pepper sprayed, who are being attacked by attack dogs, who are being shot with non-lethal rubber bullets in the face over an international interest, a financial, economical interest to a multinational corporation. So these people defending their drinking water and defending their burial grounds are being beaten, attacked, shot, pepper sprayed, but yet these college kids that are unhappy with the election results are allowed to move through the streets and destroy New York, destroy Seattle, destroy Chicago. They're allowed to do this. It's because Obama wants them to do it. The global cabal wants them to do it. Soros wants them to do it. Because the greater the violence escalates, the more citizenry will be divided. And then guess what? The news reports come out that Trump's been assassinated. Martial law is declared. Obama is the sitting reigning king. Now, it might sound a bit, far-fetched, but just consider for a moment. Just consider for a moment. Use the largest video database on the planet and go back and actually listen to what Trump has said. And I guarantee you, if you actually listen to what he says, not what the media wants you to believe he said, but to the actual words that he uses, not to the deflection in his voice, not to his, but to the actual words that he says, and you will come to realize that he hasn't said anything that you or I haven't said before. He hasn't said anything that supports the propaganda against him. He simply hasn't been politically correct. It's not politically correct to say illegal immigrants should not be allowed in. It's not politically correct to call out the Mexican government for sending us criminals. It's not politically correct to say that we need to halt immigration from Muslim countries until we can figure out who's coming in. It's just not politically correct. It's not racist. It's not politically correct. And that's what we need. We need to stop being politically correct, and we need to embrace each other as slaves fighting the slave masters. So I'm running out of time on this video, and I'm hoping that I was able to convey just some simple sort of, thoughts. But let's keep an eye out, and if you see somebody, just give them a smile, give them a wave, say hello, treat them as a brother. That's who we are. We're brothers and sisters of the human race. Thank you, and I hope this helps.